I'm Karin Rabe Vance. Welcome to S P A Minar. This is the 6th in our series of online gatherings for live theater prop professionals and anyone interested in stage props. As I mentioned, I'm Karin Rabe Vance. I'm a freelance prop manager, former prop master at the Alley Theater here in Houston, Texas, and a SPAM member. SPAM is an association of prop professional educators and prop managers from not-for-profit producing organizations with an international communication and support network where we share resources, information, solutions, and techniques, as well as safety information, continuing education, and stock. We promote the highest professional standards among prop artisans and craftspersons, and promote the field of props to potential prop professionals, working to establish educational standards for the training of prop artisans. SPAM was formed in 1994 to create a fellowship among properties professionals to address issues of common importance and to create parity with other production areas. We now have over 150 active members, reaching from Hawaii to Ireland and Canada to Florida. As with previous S P A Minars, we're requesting pay what you can donations to help support this programming and our annual grants for early career prop professionals. If you can afford to donate, the link will be in the chat during the session. I actually popped it in there already. I will do that again later. And we truly appreciate any help you can give. Tonight, we're hosting our first ever AMA, or Ask a Prop Manager Anything. I'll be your moderator tonight and host for the evening. Let's start with some introductions. First up, and this is her first S P A Minar with us, is Lori Harrison. She's from the San Francisco Opera, where she's worked as the prop master for over 20 years. She's also worked at most of the major roadhouses in San Francisco, at Industrial Light and Magic, the Greater Miami Opera, Chautauqua Opera, Santa Fe Opera, Syracuse Stage, McCarter Theater, and other assorted theaters around Philadelphia and New York. In addition to that, she's worked on a couple of TV series and 4 to 5 films. And Lori started out in carpentry and has worked in both union and non-union jobs, although she is currently a member of IATSE Local 16, where she is also on the board, I believe. Next up is Nikki Kulas. Oh, gosh, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. Nikki is in her 7th season as the prop master at First Stage in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's also worked as a prop master or prop artisan in many other Milwaukee theaters. Some of her favorites include Skylight Music Theater, Milwaukee Chamber Theater, and Renaissance Theater Works. She called Winona, Minnesota home for 8 summers as she served as the properties director for the Great River Shakespeare Festival. You may remember Nikki from her first ever S P A Minar, where she took us through the basics of puppet building. Speaking of remembering folks from past S P A Minars, you'll likely remember our next 2 guests as well. We're lucky to have Jen McClure back with us after telling us all about blood and casting and molding last year. Not together, those were separate. Jen is the property supervisor for the Yale Repertory Theater and the Yale School of Drama, where she's worked for the past 13 years. She previously worked as the prop master and technical director for Alfred University, prop master for the Merry-Go-Round Playhouse and New York Stage and Film, as well as touring with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. In addition to her work at Yale, she also works as a freelance properties artisan. Some of her notable projects have been for Hudson Scenic Studios, Walt Disney World, and musician Amanda Palmer. And last but certainly not least is Ben Hohman. He is also presented a S P A Minar on textures. Ben is in his 27th year at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, where he serves as the properties director. There he runs the props department and has prop mastered over 175 productions. Ben has also worked professionally at Actors Theater in Louisville, Kentucky, and has taught prop classes at Southern Utah University for many years. Ben also owned his own production company with 2 partners. They built parade floats, pageant scenery, and provided production support for local ballet and theater companies. What an amazing group of prop professionals. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be your moderator and host. You'll have submitted a really impressive list of questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can and we'll see where the conversation goes. If you have additional questions, go ahead and pop them into the chat and I'll keep an eye out for them. Be sure to stay to the end to hear about the growing lineup of future S P A Minars and other ways you can interact with and learn from our membership. So we're off. Let's get the evening started with this question for our panelists. How did you get started? Specifically, how did you start finding work and making connections? Did you transition from freelance to a more resident institutional position? And if so, how was that transition? We're going to throw it to Lori first. One attendee would like to know about your start in carpentry and whether you learned your skills in school or through on-the-job training.
Definitely on-the-job training. When I started out at school, it was at University of Pennsylvania, and they didn't even have a theater major, so I had to make one up myself in the engineering school. and through a bunch of circumstances, ended up not really sticking with that, and left University of Pennsylvania, worked at the McCarter Theater and Santa Fe Opera, and went back to school at Penn State, which did have a theater major. So every single non-union theater work job that I did with Penn Players and all the non-professional opportunities were really educational. And sooner or later, people started to pay me. It was just a weird thing. And I stuck with it. So I was a builder at the McCarter Theater and started out as a grunt at the Santa Fe Opera, where lots and lots of people have started out and learned stuff. Didn't really start on props till my 4th season at the Santa Fe Opera, when I was moved into prop running crew chief, and wasn't making props until Miami. And I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing. I walked around Alice McGuire's Santa Fe prop shop and wrote down every single thing she had in there and talked to people, and went to Miami and had my own little garage in the dark and had to make everything. But it really, what I have learned is that accepting just about any job, you'll learn an awful lot and meet people as you go.
How about Jen? How did you
So,
start?
yeah, I wasn't really involved in theater growing up and didn't even know that this was really a career. I had been to plays with school and that kind of thing, but really wasn't involved in it. I was an artistic kid, and I went to school for fine arts. And so I got really lucky that when I transferred for my BFA, where I was studying ceramic arts, I wound up getting housed with a whole bunch of theater people. And I had told them, oh, I think that's interesting. Could I help? And they were like, oh, of course you can. And you do props? Oh, of course you can. I was like, oh, I've heard about this props thing. What's that all about? So I was really fortunate that I went to a small liberal arts school where I was let to do a lot of things and easily, like I didn't have a lot of oversight, I guess. So there weren't any classes that I took, but I had a lot of freedom to try things, which was really wonderful and really supportive. As I moved through into jobs, really it was just kind of like I found out that jobs existed and then I would apply for them. And then when I went to new places, I would always introduce myself to everyone in every department and talk to everyone and find out what they did and what were they doing and just ask questions. And that really early on started my networking. So that's a huge thing to do wherever you go, talk to the people in all the other departments. I got my job at Yale because I overhired as a carpenter there. And then 3 years later, a job in the props department opened up and their props master called me and said, hey, I remembered you from that week you worked with us. Would you want to apply for this job? So little things come back, and the theater world is super tiny. But the big thing is just, introduce yourself to everybody that you work with and talk to everyone, because you never know who's going to help you make a connection.
Awesome. Nikki?
Oh, well, hello. So I tell everybody that I was born and bred into props because my family owns an auction house and a used furniture store. So I have been around things and props and furniture since the day I was born. So a lot of times when I was in high school doing theater and our department needed something, they would literally just send me to my house and I would go get them their Queen Anne chair or their whatever stickly writing desk, or actually, no, I never lent them the stickly writing desk. I never did that. So I ended up doing a lot of that. And then I actually was considering joining the Marines. And that didn't work out. My parents did not want that. So I ended up going to a 4-year school. And I went to Parkside in Wisconsin because I could afford it and had a really good theater program. And I went for a triple major of acting, props, and makeup, like 3D prosthetic makeup and stage makeup. And I can tell you that my makeup training helped a lot in my prop training, because that's where I actually learned molding and casting. And part of the acting side really helped with just props in general, knowing the details that we put into props and how it affects the actors and things like that. So I think that also very much helped. And we did talent reviews. So we had professionals come in and see our work at the end of the year. I know Jim Guy came to one of my talent reviews when I was in college, but I actually got freelance work out of that. And I was already a props director at Great River at graduating. And then I am not a school person. I do not like school. I do not like going to classes. I'm really sorry, Jen. I don't like going to classes. I don't like school. So grad school was not an option for me. But I was able, through another SPAM member actually, to do an apprenticeship. So I learned so much during my apprenticeship with Lisa Schlenker at Skylight. So much so that she let me stay for like 3 more years. And I just was an artisan for her, and doing a lot of freelance. And then I got the opportunity to work at First Stage full time. And the thing I can say about going from freelance to full time is that I now have my own shop. I am not doing things like carving foam in my kitchen, which I don't recommend. But that was, I think, one of the best things of going full time at one place. But yeah, I've had a fairly straight trajectory of what I've been doing. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
How about you, Ben?
A little bit like Nikki, my parents owned an antique store for 16 years when I was growing up. So I was around things as well. Started doing community theater and high school theater. Sort of tried acting, didn't really like it very much. Started doing backstage stuff. Went to the University of Cincinnati, the conservatory there. Went in to be a set designer. Got switched over to technical direction. They didn't really have a props program. So my last 2 years, I kind of created one for myself. Started coming to Utah when I was still in college as like a summer job. Went to Actors Theater for 4 years, 2 years as an artisan and 2 years as a co-prop master with Mark Walston. And then ended up moving out to Utah, and I've been here ever since. So I didn't really do it. I mean, my freelance stuff has also been on the side, this side company that I had, and that kind of stuff. But just kind of summer stock right into regional theater.
Awesome. I think you guys kind of hit on this next question, but in your introductions, but I think it's interesting, which is how do you determine what type of shop environment, children's theater, educational, regional, et cetera, is best for you? And feel free to jump in.
I will say, as someone that works in children's theater right now, I worked at 2 children's theaters, and I love the different things that we have to do, and the challenges that they create. So it actually fits perfect for me. Like, I wasn't sure I was going to stay for 7 seasons, but I am still here. But we get to make puppets, and we get to do all sorts of different things. And specifically when it comes to children's theater, we do work with the young performers a lot. So if you don't like children, don't work at a children's theater, I think. But we also, like, we double cast, we do age appropriate casting. So if you have something really heavy, you actually have to make it extremely lightweight. So we don't have the option of going out to an antique store and buying a big cool tire that someone's going to carry. We actually have to make one that an 11-year-old can carry. So we have a lot of those kind of challenges that come up. We don't do a lot of upholstery. We don't do a lot of antique furniture because that's just not the shows that we technically do. So if that is something you're more interested, going into a theater that does more Shakespeare, does more classical or that kind of thing, is a really great way to get more of that. So I think there's kind of that weird, what shows we do makes a big difference in what props you're building, which then obviously what shop you're going to be in.
Yeah, I would say that all theater is educational in some ways, because you're learning, you're teaching people, which is cool. I ended up in basically summer stock. It's a regional theater, but we mainly focus in the summer, and we do a lot of shows really fast because I'm very fast paced and like to work really quickly. And so we have 6, 8, or 10 shows kind of in the shop at the same time. The pace was the same when I was at Actors, doing like the Humana Festival and stuff. So I really like the fast pace, have lots of projects happening really quickly and pass into the shop. So I get bored really easily. My ADD kicks in. Having lots of things that I can jump around to do is kind of why I ended up here, I think.
I really didn't know that I would enjoy working with students, but it's actually one of the really great things I think about the sort of Yale School of Drama relationship is that we have some permanent shop members, but then we also get students who work with us. So I've got a team of 3 that I work with specifically in my department, and a props runner who sometimes is added into our team. And so I've got sort of staff that I know what they can do, but then we always have new students, and the students are always bringing in great new ideas and fresh energy. And I think that that's really great. There is a difference too between working at a grad school and an undergrad college. I think a couple of years ago, I was able to go to one of the KC ACTF festivals, and just like the energy shock that comes from undergrads as opposed to grad students is like infectious and incredible and amazing. But there's definitely a level of, when you're working with students, knowing that you're not going to be able to just zoom through a project, that you do have to stop a lot, and that you'd have to help guide people through things. What's refreshing for me about working in an institution that's also a school is that we embrace that fact that we're learning and that everyone is learning. And even when any of the staff members make a mistake, we sort of take that time to say, okay, we made a mistake, we're all learning, and we don't feel that pressure as much of we have to produce, we do, but it's nice that we're supported by this overall school atmosphere that I think is really, really wonderful and supportive. So that's pretty great. But I've also overhired in a ton of just regional theaters as a carpenter and done a bunch of that stuff. And yeah, working with the students can be exhilarating, but also exhausting sometimes, because you do have to say the same things over and over every year, sometimes every day, because you get different people in your shop. So if you don't like doing that, then don't work at a school.
Our shop isn't supposed to be educational. I will say that nobody just builds props. Even our main shop mechanic and the assistant shop mechanics, nobody just builds props. As a union shop, and I think that we're really lucky in this, we run the shows as well as building them, which means that for every build, we have people that are automatically thinking of how it's going to store and how it's going to run and how it's going to fit. You don't have any of these. Occasionally, if you get something from a scene shop that doesn't fit in the elevator, and we have to come up with some way to manage it when we run in reps. So it's pretty crazy at the opera. We have a crew of maybe 12 people per day, but they're in rehearsals, they're on stage doing turnarounds, they're in the shop, we're laying ground cloths. So it's working in a shop like ours, you can't be someone that just does greens or just sews. Everyone really has to be able to jump in and set the pit and load a truck and run to rehearsals at some point. That being said, if there's someone that's interested in something, we make it a point to, if there happens to be a mold making project or a good upholstery project and someone's expressed an interest, as we get new people coming through, nobody ever only does all the boring stuff either. We'll make sure that they are learning from someone that's done that before, that's done some upholstery as best we can. Obviously, there are some seasons where there is no upholstery, but we do the best we can to make sure people are learning.
So speaking about learning, we've actually, a question came up in the chat, and it was one that was submitted by a couple people in advance about grad school. I don't think any of us, myself included, have a graduate degree in props, but how important is a graduate degree to do props? And I'm going to kind of couple another question in there, which is, what sort of college level internship or experiences do we recommend? What do we recommend seeking out to become more marketable when looking for a prop related job?
I'll go. I don't think grad school is important at all unless you want to teach props, or you want to sort of skip over the whole artisan thing and try to get into a regional theater or a major theater as a prop master, which I highly don't recommend, because you really need to sort of work in a shop for a couple of years, sort of learn all those different areas, all those skills, so that you can then communicate better with all of those artisans. Mm-hmm. So, I think most prop people I know learn better by doing actual projects versus theoretical work in school. So I am not a proponent of grad school, but I do hire a lot of people who are going to grad school. But I don't think it's necessary at all for props. And as far as skills and internships and things like that, anything you can do, if you can go work in a local upholstery shop for a semester and like just help them out, learn some upholstery skills, or go to a cabinet shop or a furniture maker and just be like, hey, I just want to come help and watch and, you know, be able to mess around a little bit, and you teach me a couple of things. Those things help. Working at local community theaters, volunteering at a local theater if there's one near you, anything you can do to get your hands dirty and be crafty, set up an Etsy shop and make something, like all of those things help in the long term because you're learning new skills.
I've got a couple people on my crew who have master's degrees, but they are not in theater. I've got a couple of art master's degrees and someone with a master's in literature, and they're pushing trucks just like the rest of us.
I think I might be one of the weird unicorns that somehow landed a job teaching at a university without a master's degree. So again, you know, it's not even 100% necessary to have to be able to teach. You can, and it gives you a little bit more of an edge when you're getting in, if you're just blind applying for those jobs. I was extremely fortunate that the previous teacher who was teaching that class retired, and I was there already and got offered the class. So, you know, that was an extreme fortunate circumstance, but, you know, it's also not necessary in a field like this, where sometimes the equivalent work that you have can be, you know, commensurate to a degree. I agree with what Ben was saying, that if you know that you want to be a manager, you know, and you go to a grad school program, well, you know, I could, what it took me 10 or 15 years to learn, I could have learned in 3, you know, or learn maybe 75% of that in like 3 years in a concentrated grad program. So if I was ready to like really know that that's where I was aiming myself, that might be a reason. But the different schools out there have different focuses too. I mean, for example, my school doesn't have a props focus. A lot of the other prop focused schools have, some have more of an artisan focus, some have more of a manager focus. So you want to check those out and see what really is aiming for what you want. And again, it's just more about if you aren't finding jobs that are able to teach you what you want to know, or if you know that you want to learn a whole bunch of things in a certain tight amount of time, that would be a reason to go. But again, it's, I mean, look at how many of us don't, and a lot of the SPA members don't have MFAs, so it's not a requirement. Part of that may also be that there aren't a lot of schools that offer it, you know, so that may change in the future, who knows.
Another question that came in through chat, I'm actually going to roll a couple questions in here together. Wanting to know if anyone has had to deal with any discrimination on a job, either because of age, sex, capability, and how you overcame it, and or have you ever come across resistance physically or mentally early on that made you rethink your career as a theater artist, and how you, if so, how you were able to overcome that? I think a lot of this is, at least that second question really has to do with COVID and what the pandemic has really done to our job and our industry as a whole. So I'll throw that out there to the whole group.
I will say that I grew up in the country and doing a lot of motor sports and things like that, and kind of grew up with the boys. So, sexism, that kind of thing, we all know what it is. We've all seen it. And so the thing that I learned in my younger years is to not just take it. So if stuff does come up in any work, not saying like specifically at first stage, but like any theater, any work I've done since then, I am vocal about it and I say something in the moment, not like snapping or angry or that kind of thing, but like acknowledge that that was inappropriate or that that was not cool, and deal with it at that point. Because the one thing I've learned that if you wait, it just festers and it doesn't solve anything. So that's one thing as far as that has come up, and all of those kind of things. As far as COVID goes, same thing. I know in the summer we were all still learning. We were all still trying to figure out protocols and products and whatnot. So if myself or my crew ever felt uncomfortable, we mention it, we say it right away. Dealing with masks and things, if someone doesn't want to wear a mask, we say it right away, like, hey, you have to put your mask on or we're all walking out of this room right now. Like, not evil, not like in a bad way, but like, we're done with this. Like, this isn't going to happen this way. So that's my biggest thing, is bringing it up in the moment in a constructive kind of way, not in a angry screaming match kind of way. But that's benefited me very, very much in my life as female and, as a manager as well. So.
Anybody else?
Early on, when I was at Actors Theater, I was diagnosed with a stress-related health condition, which, props is not stressful at all, especially, in the middle of a Humana festival. And I've learned over the years to handle it. Like, I know what to eat and what not to eat and stuff when I get stressed. And as far as the other part of the question, I question myself all the time if this is the right job for me. I think most of us at some point do. But it's a creative outlet. And that's the thing. Like, if I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't be working at Home Depot or wearing a suit and like being an accountant. Like, I'd be doing something else that's the same sort of stuff, using my hands and building things. So this is just nice because it is a steady job and I know it, but there are lots of other ways to sort of express that creativity if theater doesn't have an opening for you at the moment. Opening an Etsy shop. Karin is currently running a dang good Etsy shop in her COVID time. So there's lots of ways to sort of channel that creativity and be productive with it. And there's lots of sort of side jobs, window displays or float construction or all kinds of other things like that are similar skills that you can try to get into as well. So if you can't get a theater job right now, there's lots of other things out there that allow that same creativity to happen.
Yeah, I actually want to jump in here because I was laid off in May from my job. It was a permanent layoff, so I'm not going to be going back. I miss making collaborative art like crazy, but I do have an Etsy shop. So I actually started it 2 days later. And there's a question here that I didn't pose to the group, but I think we're hitting a lot of the points of it, which is how can you start your career and build your resume through the struggles of the pandemic. And I think it's everything that everybody has talked about here. Learn wherever you can, and all of those skills that you gain, whether they're actually in a theater or in a shop or not, can go on your resume. If you're a certified scuba diver, put it on your resume. It may come in handy someday. Sorry.
A couple of my folks actually went to taxidermy school. It was a joke that we all had when we were making dead animals, because how many operas have people carrying their dead animals on a stick back from the hunting party, and we thought we'd all go to a taxidermy school and everybody else would have these live animals in great poses and all of our animals would be dead. The opportunities of what you can learn in different places that you'll use, bookmaking, paperwork, lettering, it's huge. And the more open-minded anyone can be about what you can learn from somewhere, and what you take pictures of. I can't say that I've done a lot of picture taking in my life, which is a little bit sad, because it's really nice to have a record of all the different things you've done that may not have come from a job. It may not have come from theater work.
Jumping back, there was, as we were ending the grad school, and there was a little bit of, what are the other skills or internships or things that you should be looking at to build your resume. And personally, I think the more broad skill set you have, the more you know about a ton of things, which is exactly what Laurie was just saying, is great for me personally. It sort of depends on the type of shop you have set up. So different shops sometimes have specialty folks. Sometimes they have a specialty soft goods artisan, a specialty carpenter, but there are a lot of shops that need people who know how to do a little bit of everything, because you never know what the season's going to throw at you and what the job's going to bring. And having that broad skill set is going to make you extremely marketable to a lot of different jobs and a lot of different outside opportunities as well, to potentially take on extra jobs during the summer, or to make more money on the side, or whatever that might be. So anytime you get a chance to learn more skills. One of the first upholstery projects that I did, I wasn't, having upholstery projects at school. And so I took apart a chair that I had in my apartment and, took pictures and labeled all the pieces, and then took all the notes and then put it back together, and was like, oh, okay, now I know how to upholster a chair, great. Put that on my resume. So, any time that you don't have to have a ton of money to do stuff like that. It's just, if you're interested in something, try it and do it on a small scale. And then you've got that information. You get to add that to your resume.
YouTube videos out there now are extraordinary. It's incredible what you can learn just surfing around.
So that's true. And there have been a lot of questions about skills, and we've been talking a lot about that. If you had to pick one skill to know as a prop person, what would it be? And part two of that, which is more important to you as a hiring person? If so, would you rather hire somebody who has the knowledge skills already, or somebody who has an ability to learn them?
Research. Being able to research, and not just on the internet. Knowing how to use a library, knowing how to go through magazines, but just being able to find the information is, I think, super important. And as far as being able to learn the skills or whatever, I always tell people, like, the thing I'm looking for when I interview is creativity and imagination, because either I can teach them, someone else on my staff can teach them, they can learn it from YouTube, from reading, whatever. So how to do it, you can learn to, figure it out. Like, how am I going to make this thing? That's not as teachable in my mind. So they have to be creative and imaginative. That's what I look for.
Open-minded and teamwork oriented. That's huge.
I piggyback all of those things. Absolutely. Problem solving, creativity. It's funny. It's not carpentry or sewing or foam carving, because those are things that you can learn and practice and do. I also think resilience we should throw in there, because props get cut and you work on something and then it's not there anymore, and you have to be able, but again, you did it. And even if it's cut from the show, you've got that information now. That's in your bones, in your brain. Nobody can take that away from you. So even just doing the work, even if it doesn't make it into the show, who cares? We're not getting paid by how many things make it on stage. If we would, that would be rough. But we're getting paid to do the work. And if they don't put it on stage, then, their loss, not ours.
Still goes in your portfolio.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree. My number one is problem solving. I think every props person should be able to problem solve, because that right there will get you the solution to everything else. And as far as the question about as a hirer, yeah, I don't expect everyone to have every single skill, because I don't. Like, I'm still learning however many decade, whatever into my career. So the ability to learn and the willingness to learn are my biggest things that I'm looking for. You know, I can look at a resume and that's great. I don't necessarily always look at where you went to school or every single person that, or every show you've worked on. But I will look at who you have worked with, and if I know them, and that's going to be the first question that I ask them, is that, like, how are they at problem solving, and do they want to learn? Because we can teach you, but like, do you want to learn it? So those are my two.
Yeah, you guys are spot on. We're going to shift gears a little bit. Been talking about a lot about skills, but we all know the other side of our job is managing people, and balancing directors and designers. So how do you go about finalizing plans with indecisive directors and designers, and how do you balance their needs against one another when often they can maybe be in a little bit of conflict? I see lots of smiles.
Sometimes I feel like a therapist. I mean, there are times that you literally have to like come up with a way to tell the one without being, you know, making them pissed off about the other. CCing people on emails has become a really valuable tool, but how you word things, showing 3 or 4 different possible images and maybe making the one that I think is the best a little bit nicer or bigger or something, and then kind of letting both of them respond to what I've been able to put out.
Yeah, I try to always drive it back to the play. I'm actually working on a show right now where the director and designer come up with this concept, cover all of the furniture in muslin and make it very plain, so that the characters and the costumes really popped. And so we were doing great on that. And then all of a sudden the designer realized, oh wait, I'm not really designing anything. So he wanted to, like, you know, not have muslin on the top of the desk so that we could see the inlaid pattern of this flower in the top of the desk. And the director's like, well, that's weird. He's like, well, no, each piece is going to have this thing. And because he wants to now design something. And I'm like, okay, now back to the story we're trying to tell. Let's think about, you know, is this really going to work and everything else? And so they're not really saying eye to eye at all. And so I keep going back to the script and saying, well, the concept works really well because of what we're trying to say here and blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of, yes, as Lori said, kind of the in-between, you know, giving them very specific options and making sure that it's all about telling the story and being clear with the story. So if they're not agreeing about how to tell the story, and we have a way to kind of help push that back, to making sure that the story is clear, then that's what I always try to do, is get like the egos out of the way and just be like, okay, what is this prop? What is this moment trying to do for the story? And how do we best achieve that? And that often they might not talk to each other. They have to talk through me, but at least we're making sure that the audience is getting what they're supposed to get out of the moment.
I would say another thing is figure out what the best way to communicate is. I've run into a lot of designers that won't respond to an email, no matter who you CC on it or have or whatever, but they will respond to a text message right away. So that's another thing of just figuring out the best way that they want to communicate with you, and then you use that to communicate with them. And it might be different for a designer or director, even on the same show, but that is kind of what I've found with that.
Yeah, Nikki, very much being open in the beginning about saying, what's the best way that you want me to communicate with you, I think shows both your designer and your director that, you know, you are respecting sort of where they are and what they want and what they want, you know, and some will say, just text me pictures. And then some will say, no, please email me, but only before 10 o'clock or whatever that is. But again, establishing that early and starting that up, and you know, if you have that conversation, well, then you can kind of fall back on like, well, you said that this was the best way to contact you, so I'm doing what you said. You know, I also will very often, if we sort of aren't having the decision come to at a production meeting, make sure I have a bunch of samples and pictures and kind of like have them on the table, and everybody kind of walks by and you're like, hey, let me grab you for 2 seconds. Let's all look at this together. You know, not trying to like trick anybody, but just kind of being like, it's all here, let's all see it, because you also walk a delicate line of, the director might want something and the designer may not agree with it. And you don't want to go behind the designer's back either. Ultimately the designer and the director need to communicate, and it's tricky for me for sure, because often we have students who are the designers working with directors who are from professional directors further on in their career, and the dynamic can be tricky. So advocating as well for your designer to the director, I think, is really important as well, and to not make changes to the designer's idea just because the director said to do it. You want to make sure that that everybody's on board before you make changes and do things.
You kind of hit on this a little bit, but Deb Morgan commented in the chat, could you talk about how to say no to directors?
A lot of money.
It's hard. It's really hard. Especially if it's like the artistic director of your theater who is directing the show, and you're like, but you're the no, it's really hard. But it also kind of goes back to what Ben was talking about of what's the best choice for the story itself. So, and getting everyone on board and into the conversation, because you can say no to a director if you can explain yourself and also have everyone on board with it. If it's just you versus one other person, it's not collaborative anymore, and it just becomes an issue. So trying to keep everyone involved will help with this, because instead of just a blanket no, it's more of a, hey, is there a better way? Which always is a good start in a conversation.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of, I'll see what I can do. Let's see what we can do for that. We'll see if we can make that happen. And then if you have to say no, backing that up with, we don't have enough time, or we don't have the money, and here's why, but here's what we could do, right? So if you do have to say a no, go at a no with other options of no to that, but yes to these other three things, so that it doesn't look like you're just putting up a wall and blocking everybody's ideas. Again, this is all super collaborative, and especially for the designers and the directors, very emotional, because it's their art and their ideas that they're putting out there. And again, being able to support that. So yeah, I love magic sort of, maybe we'll see, at least right away to answer questions. And then if you do, again, have to come back with a no, have a good reason for it. And it's not just like a no, I don't feel like doing that. It's a no, we only have 6 hours left, and that's a 30-hour job.
Yeah, I think what both the ladies have said, I always try to, when something like that comes to me, like, oh my gosh, this is, I don't think we can do this. Instead of saying that, I say, okay, describe to me why it's important to you and what you envision in your head, so I can go away with all the information and then brainstorm with my team or whoever to figure out, okay, we obviously can't do what they asked for, like Jen was saying, but what are the options we can go back with that help to get to what they need? Because I think they may be asking for maybe impossible, but if you understand what the intention or purpose for it is, you may be able to come back with some really good options that still get them where they want to get to without the big hairy thing that they asked for that you just can't achieve.
So it's not so much no, but you're getting to a yes somehow.
Yes. Yes. And yes, you can both agree to. That wasn't the original. Yeah.
So moving on, because there's a really big important question that was asked by a couple of people. And I'm really going to direct this kind of to Nikki and Lori, but all of you are welcome to respond. But in light of the racial reckoning for white American theater, have any of you had anyone question the title prop master? I know a lot of times property managers can mean a different thing. Like I used to get lots of things about handrails in the theater when I had a properties manager title, which is not my jam. And what are more acceptable and accurate titles for a properties department manager?
I haven't gotten any kickback on that. I think that, and I haven't quite come up with, I think that our opera company is trying pretty hard to do diversity training, and even the board, they've got board diversity training, and they've got they're really working on it pretty hard, and it's very, very interesting, and I'm doing a lot of research. But there's so much history affiliated with the union titles, and I think that there are an awful lot of places that have a union running crew and a non-union building crew that tend to have a prop manager that's responsible for getting the props there. It's a job that I had at other theaters, and you turn it over to the union crew, who are the ones who handle it. And so you end up with a union prop master who really had nothing to do with where anything came from. And then the prop manager that, you know, in our circle did all the work. So I'm trying to approach this with my union, not very successfully yet. But of course, you know, we have a master carpenter, a master electrician, a property master, and I haven't heard anyone discussing that, except maybe within the spam circle. We talk about it sometimes. Nikki, any?
I'm not a huge fan of prop master, but it is fairly specific. Our shop is non-union, but our theater is union. So in theory, I should not have this title at all, because we are affiliated with IATSE, and it is a very union-based title in that respect. My job is more, I think, along the lines of a props director or a prop manager, but I think more lines of a prop director. I can say that when I was at Great River, I went from an artisan up to what was supposed to be a prop master. And our artistic director actually was the one who fought and was like, nope, props director. That is what the job is. We're getting rid of this prop master stuff. You are going to be a props director. And that's the first time that I was like, oh, yeah, all right, cool. I'm a director. But it's no different than a technical director. And I know that there's a lot of issues sometimes when it comes to administration, that are not necessarily in the crux of the production department, that are more in the business side. And I know there's a lot of things with titles in there about not having director titles or manager titles unless you're supervising, and that becomes an issue. I know I've seen it with tech director, that if you have a production manager and a tech director, a lot of times the business side is like, hold up, wait, no, tech director is higher than this, so you can't, like, this can't be this. And I think theater is just so different that it doesn't matter, I guess. I do know there's a whole bunch of other connotations with the term prop master, which I don't agree with. But realistically, like, they all kind of do the same thing. Props manager, prop supervisor, prop director, they vary slightly. So kind of, that was a long-winded explanation on nothing. I'm sorry.
Really better than prop mistress. They have tried that.
No, I'll say no on that one.
Ben or Jen, do you have anything you want to
yeah, I will say, so at my organization in the past year, we just went through this where we renamed a whole bunch of our production teams. Now, granted, we aren't under IATSE, so we're not sort of beholden to any of those other rules or things, but so we got rid of master in my title. So my title is now prop supervisor, and I say that I manage the one level of shows, and then the students who manage the student shows, they manage those. So I oversee the staff and I oversee the stock and manage the shop and that kind of thing. So that's where supervisor comes from. And then when it comes to pulling the things for the shows, I say I manage the show. But we also did get rid of, for master carpenter and master electrician, that we now use lead. So we have lead shop carpenter and lead electrician. So we did it across the board. It wasn't just for props. You know, we still have master's degrees. So I don't know like where that's all gonna kind of come shake out in the laundry. But who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years, but the conversation is happening. But again, I think that it's tied up in a big can of worms in a lot of places, that there's a lot of, a lot more structure, especially like in the journeyman levels and that kind of thing, of where sort of master falls in that.
Yeah, here at the festival, I'm the props director because I oversee the department. I also prop master specific shows, and there are other prop masters who work under me in other theaters. So we haven't changed that title. It's interesting to me because some of the connotations of master, that are out there do have kind of direct connotations to some of the issues. And this is based on, the guild system of learning, where, you're an intern, you're an apprentice, you're a journeyman, and then you finally master the skill, and so you finally earn that title. So we haven't really talked about it a lot here. I mean, we've gotten rid of like we don't have master electricians. We have electric supervisors and stuff. So I think here the only position that still has master in the title is props master. And we could certainly call them prop supervisors, I guess, but it hasn't been something that we've discussed a lot.
I would also jump in with, I think prop master is the only one where the master comes at the end. When you have a master carpenter, master electrician, those kind of things, they sound more in the guild world of they are the master of this. But I think props is the only one that has it at the end, which might be why it sounds always so weird, but I'm not sure if you guys know of any others.
The only other one I can think of would be a wig master.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to switch gears and we're going to go to a lighter subject. What is your weirdest, favorite, most impossible prop? What is the weirdest thing you've driven around in your car? What is the weirdest question you've ever had to ask a salesperson? That question actually was like, how many bodies will fit in this fridge? So jump in. What's your one favorite, impossible, weird thing?
I'll go. I was trying to make a fake fire with like steam, basically. So I'd watched a YouTube video and stuff. And so I went to a local box store and bought a tea kettle. But then I needed hose parts to connect it to my pipe that already had holes drilled in it to create sort of a line of fire. And so I took the tea kettle in with me to Home Depot to the plumbing aisle and like found a connector that would attach to it, to get to my pipe and all this stuff. And I took it all up and I set it all on the conveyor belt. And I was like getting my credit card out and everything else to pay. And the salesperson was like scanning everything. And she just picked up the teapot and tried to scan it. And it made this weird noise. And she looked at it and she tried to scan it again. And I looked up and I was like, oh, I brought that in from Walmart. And she's like, and she looked at it, she looked at all the other stuff I was buying, and she was like, why? And I started to explain to her, I was like, I'm doing something weird for the Shakespeare Festival. And she was like, oh, okay. Because otherwise I would have been there for hours trying to make her understand what I was trying to do. But
when I guess it was years ago in Miami, before there were so many options that I've now learned about for bodies, we were hanging, bodies from the gallows in a Ballo production. And at the time I thought, what about blow-up dolls? They exist already. You can weight them and put clothes on them. And so I kind of called one of the companies and I'm asking how tall they are and, what clothes would fit and, what you can do to the face. And they're like, well, the mouth is kind of round. and finally I said, oh, you're probably wondering why. And I kind of told what we were doing. And you could hear, she puts her hand over the phone, Jim, they want to hang one of our Miss Worlds.
that's awesome.
I will say any large puppet gets definitely buckled into my truck and becomes a passenger, which is always fun when you have a fun puppet and kids are like laughing at you when you drive past. Just this year, I had a giant hippo in the back of my truck going from the zoo to the shop. And That was really fun and exciting when its mouth opened up and went back down right while I was driving past a school. Yep.
Our biggest puppet was a 20-foot tall, 2-headed snake puppet. It wouldn't fit in the car.
Mine are usually connected with blood. So yeah, we were trying to pump blood through something, and so I'm at the hardware store, and it's like I'm looking at all the valves and I'm looking at the pumps, and it's like, okay, well, it says it pumps this much water, but like how much is it going to pump if it's something thicker, and is it going to, and what do you need? And of course the people come and ask, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I always lead with like, I work for theater, and so usually they just walk away at that point, but it's like, okay, so I'm trying to do something with blood, not real blood, like fake blood, but it's called real blood. That's the brand. So like, yeah, and then you go through the whole, and so sometimes they're interested and sometimes they're just like, okay, whatever. But that's usually some of my big ones. Yeah, and yeah, whoever said in the, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing this for? Yeah, not what this was meant for. That's always the answer.
Always the answer.
Always,
Yeah, we have a pretty great local hardware store, not the big box store where I know the people. So that's usually when I'm doing something super weird where I go, and they don't mind if I kind of hang out for a while and like dig through the shelves.
I'm going to jump in on this one because we were doing a show. It was in the middle of tech, and we had I think it was a 24-inch tall vase that the actress had to carry, and it was too heavy. It weighed 3.5 pounds. So we had to find a lighter one. And there's a store here that had all of this like formed tin vases. So I took my kitchen scale to the store, and it was in the middle of this aisle, and I set this kitchen scale on the floor, and I'm like weighing all of the vases. And I see this woman come, and she starts to turn down the aisle, and she looks at me, and she just walked away. I'm like, wise choice. We only have like 2 more minutes. So I'm going to ask our last question. And I know Nikki hasn't answered this. I don't know if the rest of you do. But what's your favorite dinosaur?
Nikki can go first. She's been excited.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Okay, I've never actually heard it pronounced, but it's a Giganotosaurus. And it's essentially kind of like a T-Rex, but it's not found in the Northern Hemisphere. So we actually don't know that much about it, but it's spelled like a Gigantosaurus-ish. So that, and if you want to include sharks as a dinosaur-y kind of thing, megalodons are great, but helicoprions are also very cool. And they found fossils in Utah. So Ben, you should go check out, because it's basically a cirque saw in their mouth.
Awesome.
Love sharks.
Mine is a Dreadnoughtus scarani. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last word correctly, but it was one of the largest ever. Pretty cool.
I'm holding tight to the Triceratops, even though apparently it was more of a baby of something else, but they're just too darn cute. Yeah. And like they would make, someday I need to make a giant head, because like, oh God, there's just such a great shape in the horns and yeah. So someday I'm going to make a nice big puppet head of one of them.
Entering into the world of becoming a dinosaur myself, I don't want to hurt the feelings of any of my fellow future dinosaurs. So I decline to respond. I like all of them.
All right. Thank you guys so much. It's been a fun and informative night. It's that time where Jim, who's the president of SPAM, would tell you to grab your Sharpies to mark your calendars. And here's our coming attractions. On Sunday, March 21st, SPAM member Mara Rich, prop supervisor at Syracuse Stage, will present Fix It with a Formula, prop paperwork systems and formulas. On Sunday, April 18th, author, prop master, prop designer, and faculty member at North Carolina School of the Arts and SPAM member Eric Hart will give us Props You Can Make at Home, which will show us how to make props using tools and materials commonly found at home. Could be good in the COVID era, just gonna say. And also provide a preview of his upcoming book, Prop Building for Beginners, 20 Props for Stage and Screen. Then on Sunday, May 16th, we're going to have our first international Spaminar. Emer Murphy is going to talk to us about props in the Abbey Theatre, the National Theatre of Ireland. There are more SPA Minars currently in development, so stay tuned for updates. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I threw the links to that in the chat up at the beginning. SPA Minar is produced by the Society of Properties Artisans Managers, with special thanks to the SPAM Education, Publicity, and Finance Committees. Thanks again for watching, and please keep your suggestions for future SPA Minars coming. We want to know what you want to learn about. I'm going to invoke Jim one more time. Now go wash your damn hands, put on your masks, be kind to one another, and prop on. We'll see you next time.